morning. We have one more day of the second round of the NCAA tournament. And Jeffrey, I do believe that this is the best first weekend that I can ever remember, between how competitive all the games have been, all the upsets we've gotten, all these crazy endings. The one thing is that we've had one kind of close to a buzzer beater when the first game of the round of 64. But that's really been it. That's like the one thing that we've been missing is buzzer beaters and last second shots. We've had opportunities, guys have just missed them.
We should have known coming into this tournament that it was going to be mayhem. And I think we had an idea, but when you're filling out your brackets, you're still like, I don't know how this, team A beats team B. Team B's been better all year. I like them, whatever. But you just see it. You see it this year more than ever. Again, these guys are quarantined. They're not able to take walks outside and see their families and, hang with their parents and see fans and all of those things. I know they've done it for most of the year, but again, it changes the whole dynamic here in Indianapolis. So I'm not surprised that there's been a ton of upsets. I'm also not surprised because, as we've said most of the year, and I've done the top 25, I did it pretty much every day for the first 3 months of the season. There's not much disparity after the top couple teams. We've seen Gonzaga and Baylor, and maybe a couple other teams have kind of gone into that third spot, whether it's been Michigan, Alabama for a little while, Ohio State for a minute, go into that third spot. But frankly, it's been Gonzaga, Baylor, and then not a lot of difference with a 3 to 25 or 3 to 40 even.
Yeah. So a lot of things happened yesterday. Syracuse won. We had Oral Roberts advancing to the second round, or to the second weekend. We had Oregon State knocking off Cade Cunningham. But I think that the biggest storyline for me, and the biggest talking point, is probably Loyola knocking off Illinois. Illinois was I think you could make the argument, the hottest team coming into the NCAA tournament. And it kind of was the tipping point for the conversation about whether or not the Big Ten was overrated, whether or not, that entire conversation with all the losses that have happened with the teams in that conference. So, Jeff, let me ask you this. What were you all that surprised by the way that Loyola played? And do you think that it allows you to make any kind of overarching conclusion about the Big Ten as a whole, or Indiana in general?
Listen, I was a little surprised that Illinois didn't go on a run and at least make it a game. That's what I was surprised about. At no point did it ever feel like Illinois had a shot of really coming back. They never put actual game pressure on Loyola. And again, we said it all year, Rob, and you started it earlier than anybody probably in the damn country. You said, it's all about matchups with Kofi defensively in the ball screen. And to be honest, they dropped them, and they never made adjustments. They never tried to. And the adjustment might have been just taking Kofi off the floor and just saying, we can't win with Kofi right now. Yes, he's scoring points in the post, but he's absolutely killing us defensively. And I thought it was Kofi. It was Io. He wasn't good defensively either. But again, it's just, part of it to me, watching Kofi in person, I think it's a little bit different when you see it on TV and in person, is he's a specimen, a physical specimen, but his instincts and obviously his speed is slow. He's always a step slow, it feels like, getting over there, whether it's for blocking shots or help, whatever it is. He looks slow. And he really looked slow yesterday against Cam Krutwig.
Yeah, I think the credit should go to Porter Moser more than anything else.
No question.
Kofi, we know what Kofi's limitations are, right? Everybody on the planet knows what Kofi's limitations are. And I thought that over the course, the last 6 weeks, he had gotten better. It's not like he was, when he was a freshman, he was a train wreck defensively. Earlier on this season, he was still working through some things. He's never going to be great on that end, but I thought that he got to the point where it was not something that you could repeatedly attack until we saw what Loyola did. And what I was really impressed about, and I thought that Porter Moser's game plan was brilliant, is that he didn't just run ball screens. he ran a lot of action before the ball screen, and what he got him into was a dribble handoff where he had his guards coming off of basically a double screen or a DHO that operated as a double screen because Kofi's man, Cam Crut, would be there setting the screen too when the guy came off of the dribble handoff, which just made it that much more difficult for Illinois to be able to guard and to cover, and it got their defense moving. And it's generally speaking something that Brad Underwood has done quite a bit. When we talk about how he wants to get Ayo Dosunmu getting downhill to his right hand, like he runs a lot of stuff that's kind of similar to what Porter Moser was running yesterday, and it worked so well. It worked unbelievably well. And the other thing he did, which I thought was really, really smart, and it's something that Loyola does a lot of, and I didn't really think about it before the matchup started, was just get Cam Crowder in the high post and let him pass out of it because it's going to force Kofi to come out of the lane, right? And so, I mean, he had a couple of really nice dimes. I think he finished with 19, 12, and 5 assists. So, it was a really, really impressive and comprehensive beatdown from Loyola. So I know one of the big talking points has been that Loyola was like criminally underseeded and that the committee did them wrong. And I know that you feel a certain way about it. And I think I kind of disagree with you. So I'm going to let you say what you got to say first. And then I'm going to say my piece. But I think that there's a middle ground, which hasn't really been something that a lot of people have discussed at this point.
I have a big problem with complaining about seeding when it's like, again, whether you're a 6 seed or an 8 seed, or I know their KenPom numbers were really good, but when you look at who are their best wins? Rob, tell me their best wins this year.
I mean, they didn't have good wins. They lost to Wisconsin, they lost to Richmond. Like they lost to they had it was Drake, and then I think there was one more that I'm blanking on. But I mean, their best win was basically
Indiana
Drake.
State. Indiana State.
Yeah,
was the 4th. So their best win was who?
It was Drake, wasn't it?
And Drake two times. And who did Drake not have in both of those matchups?
Yeah, they didn't have their best players.
And the first matchup was the game after they lost Tank. Okay, right away, game after. I have a hard time being like, well, they beat Illinois. They were underseeded. Like, come on. Like, really, look at their resume. And again, to me, you're picking apart stuff that doesn't need to be picked apart because really the difference between them and whoever got the 6th seed was so minimal anyway. Yes, whoever got the 6th seed, I don't even know who all it was right now. USC, Colorado. Colorado got the 6th seed? No, they got 5. BYU, San Diego State, Texas Tech. Like Texas Tech obviously had better wins. It's not even close. They were in the Big 12. They had better opportunities. Just easy to say after you watch them beat Illinois. So I have a hard time again this year when you could throw all these teams' resumes in a hat and say they were criminally underseeded or overseeded or whatever. Like, who cares?
Yeah, you're right that there's a lot of confirmation bias here because everybody was waiting to be able to jump on the NCAA to be able to say, like, you got Loyola wrong because of where they are in the metrics. And to a point, I agree. Like, so they were top 10 in KenPom and top 15 in the net heading into Selection Sunday. And I don't think that means that they should have been like a 3 seed. But I do think that if you look at their resume versus what someone like a San Diego State did, whose best win was Utah State on a neutral, who beat UCLA at home, and beyond that had a bunch of like wins against the good teams in their league that have proven to really not be all that good. I think that you can make a very, very strong case that Loyola has a better profile overall than what San Diego State had. And the fact that they were an 8 and San Diego State was a 6 in the same.
Okay, they're 4 losses. Let's do this then. Let's do this. I think they had 4 losses all year. BYU in the tournament.
But, okay, you're right. But I don't want to compare their resume. But the problem is, what's the point of having metrics like the net and taking into account metrics like KenPom when the NCAA said they came out and they said this. They said what they do is they use the metrics that are results based to determine who's going to get in the field, and they use the metrics that are predictive, like KenPom and like the net, to seed teams. You can't say that and then have Loyola, who is the number 10 team on KenPom, as the 8 seed and have any kind of justification. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth when you say that. So either you're valuing the predictive metrics when you seed teams, or you're not. And what they did, what they said they were, and then they had Loyola, who was number 10 on KenPom, as the 8 seed. That's the problem, right?
Because they're number 10 on KenPom doesn't mean that it's accurate. Like, people are acting like KenPom is the end.
But hold on, don't use this as a platform to rail on KenPom. Explain to me how the NCAA can say they're using predictive metrics to seed teams as an excuse for putting Oklahoma State as a 4, right? Oklahoma State, great resume. Best wins in the country. They had 10 quad 1 wins heading into the tournament. Illinois was the only team that had more. So you can say Oklahoma State's a 4 because we're valuing predictive metrics when we see teams. And then you have Loyola, who's top 10 in KenPom, as an 8 seed. That's the disconnect right there. That's why there's a problem, because you're saying you're doing one thing, and then when it comes to Loyola, you're not doing that same thing for them. That is why people were upset about where they were seated, and that is why people can probably justifiably say that they were underseeded. It's the issue that you're doing one thing for Oklahoma State and you're doing another thing for Loyola Chicago, and that's really the whole issue. And I think the biggest problem is that when it comes down to it, Loyola proved how good they were. They basically said, like, look, we went out and we comprehensively kicked the shit out of Illinois. And the team that pays the price when someone gets underseeded like this, same thing that happened at Wichita State with like Kentucky a couple of years ago when Kentucky was the 8 seed and upset them, is the team that pays the price is the higher seeded team that has to deal with the tougher competition.
You know what? If you're the number 1 effing seed, you should beat them, whether they're the 8 or the 6 or whoever it is. If you're that good, you're going to run into decent teams, and it's the luck of the draw, Rob. Look, we got Oregon State now playing Loyola. Loyola is just fine now. They're going to make out. They're going to make out now. They get Oregon State. Okay?
Yeah.
They're going to be fine. So, like, they didn't get screwed. Like, enough. Let's move on. Who cares?
It wasn't Loyola necessarily that really got screwed, right? It was.
Oh, but Illinois. But if you're that good, you don't complain. Whoever you're going to get in that 8-9 game, they're all about the same. It's matchups. They drew a tough matchup with Cam Crowley.
They did, and it was a tougher matchup than they should have drawn because the NCAA put a team that is top 10 on KenPom and the number 8 seed.
So tired of this. Can we move on? This is stupid.
It's not stupid. It's a very legitimate criticism of the
Illinois. You're gone. You're gone. You deserve to be gone. You didn't beat Loyola.
Oh yeah, they got their ass kicked. They deserve to be gone. The question was, did they deserve to play a team that is currently ranked above Alabama, above Ohio State, above Arkansas, above your Texas Tech Red Raiders, above all of those teams? Did they deserve to play a team like that in the second round? That's the question that you have to answer.
Joe, can you tell Rob to move on? Can people start in the chat texting Rob that this is getting old, that nobody cares anymore?
It's just you need to recognize at some point that okay, well, all right, we'll move on. What's next?
What's next? Oral Roberts.
Hold on, before we do that, the Big Ten. Where do you stand on the idea that the Big Ten is overrated? There's two things that I've heard, and I just want your reaction to both of them. One of them is that I think you made this point yesterday. They played a 20-game conference slate, and that is something that could really like wear on teams, especially with how they kind of pack games in to the end of the season to make up for stuff. And then you combine that with the fact that they played the Big Ten tournament, and all of these teams have now been in Indy for 2 weeks now. So how much do you think any of that played into this, or is this just a situation where you have a conference where everything is built on big guys inside, going up and playing a modern style of basketball?
Yeah, I think part of it is, again, that if you have a couple really, really good weeks in the non-conference early on, and a lot of these teams honestly returned the core teams. So they were good in non-conference. Wisconsin was pretty good in non-conference because they had everybody coming back. Iowa, there was a reason we had all these teams ranked high in the preseason, because a lot of them had, a majority of their team coming back. So you win in the non-conference. And I've always said it, and people go crazy on it, but your bids are determined by what you do generally in non-conference. And the Big Ten did well, and we weren't surprised about it. And then they beat the hell out of each other, and it was fun. But I said it all year. I thought the top 7 teams in the Big 12 were better than the top 7 teams in the Big 10. And I think you agreed with me when we were talking about that throughout the year. I wasn't saying like there were a bunch of Big 12 teams that could win the whole thing. I thought Baylor was probably their only shot. But the Big Ten, you and I thought about it, and we're like, all right, who has a chance to win it all in the Big Ten? There weren't that many. Like, there were a lot of good teams, but neither one of us felt like Ohio State was a Final Four team. Really. Felt like they would need some help. Iowa, are they a Final Four team? I don't think so. They're going to need some help. Michigan was the one team that you and I both eventually bought into as a Final Four team. But, yeah, I mean, they beat the hell out of each other. 20-game schedule. There aren't a lot of off nights. Penn State wasn't bad. Northwestern, they weren't good, but they had a little stretch there. Nebraska is the one team, and they even had talent. So I did, especially down the stretch, I feel like I don't think it was about the tournament being here in Indiana and them being here this long, because it's only been a couple weeks. It's not like they've been here for like 6 weeks or something like that. But I think it was more them beating up on each other, and that it was deep, but it wasn't as powerful as people said it was.
Yeah, the problem ended up being that outside of like the top three, which was Michigan, Illinois, and Iowa, and maybe you can make the argument that Ohio State belongs in there too, is that a lot of those teams just ended up being looking really good because they played a lot of games against Big Ten foes, and they won a lot of games against Big Ten foes because somebody's going to have to beat teams in the Big Ten, Right. So everything kind of got inflated, and what's the saying? The rising tide lifts all ships. Kind of a thing happened with some of the seeding. So I think that some of the bottom teams ended up getting overrated. Like, look, I think Wisconsin is not quite as good as what people thought they were going to be. I think that Purdue is one of those teams that's very evident where, like, you have a young team that played well, they got some timely wins, and that got, I don't want to say overseeded, but they weren't quite as good as they maybe looked. Same thing with Michigan State. Michigan State pulled off some great wins down the stretch of the season. That doesn't mean that we can ignore what happened at the start of the year. So at the end of the day, though, if they get, let's say that Iowa makes it to the Elite Eight and Michigan makes a run and gets to the Final Four, which is something that's still possible for them to do, I really don't think that you can say that the Big Ten was all that overrated. Right. And it's all like one game samples. Like the only result so far that was really shocking was just how comprehensively Loyola beat Illinois. I mean, that at this point, that's really it. A lot of people saw that Oral Roberts. I don't want to say they saw the upset coming, but everybody knew that Oral Roberts was going to be able to give Ohio State a problem.
And Florida, everybody knew like Florida's been so Jekyll and Hyde this year. They're not that good without Keontae Johnson. Like that was one that, again, I love the regular line in that. I don't think I took the money line. I probably should have. But nobody trusts Florida. Nobody trusted them. This wasn't a huge upset. Just, the fact that, to me, we've got, and I tweeted this out a little while ago, and I think you responded on the text thread, one of these four teams going to the Final Four. Houston, which, again, okay, that's legit. They've been good all year. Syracuse, who was basically very close to not making the NCAA tournament. Loyola Chicago, of which, again, their best win was Drake all year. And Oregon State, who, amazingly, I forgot, I tweeted out the Pac-12 preseason poll. They weren't just dead last, Rob. They were like, they got every vote for last place in a league that sucked this year. Sucked. And I know they're 6-0 right now. I get it. But they weren't good. Let's face it. They've gotten a little bit of luck with some of their teams so far in the NCAA tournament. They were dead last, Wayne Tinkle. And Tinkle and Hinkle, that should have trended. I don't know if it did. But, like, how was Tinkle and Hinkle not trending last night?
Because I don't think anybody knows that Wayne Tinkle is the head coach at – how many people know that? Not very many people know that.
I don't know. He had a sweatshirt too. So, he wasn't sweating last night because he's got, like, a pullover or something. It's not the same without Tinkle in a dress shirt absolutely dripping through. And we should tweet out that picture at some point.
All right, so let's before we get into today's games, we got to talk a little bit about Oral Roberts and a little bit about Oregon State and that win, and probably need to touch on Syracuse winning as well. So Oral Roberts getting to the Sweet 16, obviously, like, that's probably the biggest storyline here. They're the second ever 15 seed to make it that far. The first one obviously was Dunk City. And I mean, look, they have two guys that are going to end up playing basketball professionally for a long time. They have a brilliant coach that just literally just puts them in ball screens over and over and over again and spaces the floors with shooters, and nobody can figure out what the hell to do with it. Like, what is going on here? How did that team finish fourth in the Summit League? It makes no sense. College basketball makes no sense.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, and I still wonder how many people are pronouncing Max Asmus's name wrong.
A lot.
I mean, has anybody asked his parents what's up with the spelling of the last name? Have you heard anybody? Like, I want to get his parents on a Zoom call and just explain it to me. How that's not Abmas. Like, I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
It doesn't make any sense. It's like I'm going to start calling you Goose Man.
Should I do that on one of their availabilities this week? Should I ask him?
Yeah, absolutely. Ask him how is your last name? Why isn't it Abmas?
I'm going to find out their next immediate availability. It'll be like tomorrow probably, or maybe we'll try to get him on the pod. Maybe we'll try to get him on tomorrow. Yeah,
let's do it. So the one thing I do want to note about that game, which I thought was fascinating, was Paul Mills' decision to intentionally foul with 3 minutes left. Did you see that?
Yeah, well, it was smart. I mean, they fouled a 50% free throw shooter, and he missed the front end of a 1-and-1. It was absolutely huge and so brilliant. More coaches don't do that. Like, more coaches don't do that when you're in a position where you got to make up ground. Play the numbers, and he played them there, and it worked.
Yep, it's something that I think more teams need to do, and it's something that we see NBA teams do a lot of. And look, like the way that he explained it after the game was we weren't getting any stops at all. So I just figured this was probably the best way to do it. We only had one more opportunity in the 1-on-1, so just get it done. And it ended up being huge because that was the first point that they took the lead in the second half. Because they weren't getting, he's right, they weren't getting any stops. They were kind of trading baskets. They kept cutting the lead, and they weren't able to get over the top. And they missed the free throw, and they come down the next possession. And I think it was Kevin O'Banner scored, and they went up 77-76 and never looked back. Right? After that foul, Florida only scored 2 points the rest of the game. So good for him. Good for them. We'll see if they can end up making a run. I think that Arkansas is a pretty terrible matchup for them, given how Arkansas wants to play with Justin Smith at the 5. So the Oregon State one, like that was very frustrating for me to watch. Cade Cunningham.
Cade. Like, even though we're rooting for Tinkle, we're rooting for Oregon State in the upset, but everybody's rooting for Cade Cunningham because it's just, you hate to say it, but it's a better story at this point. I just want to
see him make a run, man. Like, look, and that's nothing against Oregon State.
We love Cade. Not only do we love Cade on the court, but like Cade has just done everything the way that you want a number one player to do it, hasn't he? I mean, had a chance to bolt with his brother or without his brother for money or for another program when the NCAA hit Oklahoma State with a 1-year postseason ban. He's been like the consummate best teammate you can possibly find. Way too unselfish as the number 1 overall pick. Like, most guys are just about themselves. Cade's been all about the right things all year. So, like, yeah, we're and on the court again. Like, he's a stud. He's just so talented, so much fun to watch, and he struggled in the tournament. He struggled in these 2 games.
Yeah, I think what we really saw was kind of the limitations of his supporting cast. You know, there aren't a lot of shooters on that floor. When Avery Anderson isn't scoring 20 points a game, there really isn't another option. You could send 2 and 3 guys at him and trust that you're not going to have to worry about it. Like, I saw all these criticisms. Like, one guy from ESPN tweeted out, like, he's limited on the number of 2-point percentage shots that he can make. And it's like, what, are you watching this? Like, he puts the ball on the floor. He's got 6 guys in front of him. There's no space.
Who said
that? Kevin Pelton was worried about the percentage that he was shooting from 3. And it's like, I get it, right? Like, that's something that you look for.
Yeah.
That's a marker that you look for, but you have to also be able to like see what's happening on the court and understand how this works, right? Part of the reason why we're so bullish on him, like that, we've made this point over and over again, but the thing that he does best is manipulate defenses with the pass and be able to move people around with his eyes. And you can't do that when defenses don't have to pay attention to the guys on the wings. Like, you could throw a pass like this and have it be like a great pass, but if you're throwing to an 8% 3-point shooter that no one has to guard, then what's the use? So that was part of the, and that was another part of the criticism where it's like, how come Cade Cunningham isn't trying to take this game over? Well, he tried to. but it's very difficult to hit like contested 22-footers over and over and over again. That's not his game. That's not what he does best. So I think to me, what that showed was a little bit of the limitations of Oklahoma State's roster and kind of how impressive it was that Mike Boynton got them playing to the level that they played this season. I'll also note that was one of the dumbest games I've ever seen in my entire life. Like there were so many decisions by both teams that just had me like, what the hell are you doing? Why did you think that was a good idea? I don't think I've ever said that more in one game than watching Oregon State and Oklahoma State last night. It was just, oh man, it looked like a bunch of kids at the end of a long, grinding, brutal season.
Yep. What else we got?
Syracuse, Buddy Boeheim going nuts. 23 second half points, scored 25.
I love Buddy.
Every year. Like, I don't understand. I do not understand for the life of me how Syracuse can just dick around for 4 months every season and then show up to the NCAA tournament. And all of a sudden, nobody can figure out that zone, and someone on that roster turns into fucking Steph Curry. I do not understand it. How does this work? It doesn't make sense to me. It just, and also, like, I love how it's turned like Jim Boeheim into just the most condescending douchebag on the planet. Like, it's when
great.
Like,
it's great.
It's so funny. Like, it's so funny to me when Syracuse like is awful for most of the year and then has these unbelievable runs in March, and Jim Boeheim is like, well, I told you that this is what we were going to be able to do. Like, nobody wanted to believe me, but this is how good we are. I told you if you were taller than 5'2" and played basketball before in your life, maybe you would understand it if you were like me.
What did he say? He called out bloggers yesterday?
Yeah, I don't know. He said nothing you read on the internet is true. It's so funny, man.
That's who we need to bring on. We need to get Boeheim on this week somehow. We need to find a way. Listen, Boeheim and I have got at it plenty over the years, but we're pretty good. And honestly, I really think he'll forever be indebted to me in his mind, because I wrote a big story about Buddy and him at the Peach Jam a few years ago before Buddy committed, and sat down with Buddy, and Buddy's the best, man. He's the absolute best. And I'm really happy.
When he hits threes and he tries to look all tough and hard with like his baby face, and like it's very clear like he only gets hair right here on his chin. It's just like, dude, you're Buddy Boeheim. Like, settle.
He's the biggest.
His snarls are just hilarious. And Joe Girard, like, how is Joe Girard a basketball player? Like, that dude's like 5'11". He's kind of chunky. He has very much like 80s. Like his hair is very much like 80s sitcom dad, with the way it's kind of slicked back. Like, he's got to get rid of the goatee. I do not understand how Syracuse is good this year. It does not make sense to me, but here they are.
They've got enough good players. I mean, Dolagier was good yesterday. Guerrier is good. Like, they've got enough good players. They don't have a star, but Buddy's been shooting like a star. And if he does,
I don't get it, man. But good for them. The last thing I want to note before we can move on is that is Baylor's back. They're back.
The first half they were back. I talked to Scott Drew for a while. I was there for the game yesterday afternoon, and first half that was like vintage Baylor. That was as good as I've seen them play in a long time. Second half, I feel like they just kind of took their foot off the gas and were like, all right.
Well, it's also Wisconsin. They didn't shoot as well and they weren't as crisp offensively, but Wisconsin also like hit some tough shots. Like, Dimitri Trice is a guy that can hit tough shots, and he reeled off like 3 or 4 in a row that kind of made it look like it was closer than it actually was. Like, there was a point when it felt like people were worried about Wisconsin coming back, and at no point in the second half were they inside the spread.
Right.
They never got closer than 6.5. The spread was 6.5. They never got inside that number. So it's, Baylor, if Baylor not playing well is holding off a Wisconsin team that's hitting some ridiculous shots without letting them get within 2 possessions, like that's a pretty good basketball team. All right, let's talk about today's slate. We have 8 games, Jeffrey. It starts off with probably the most interesting one, at least from a gambling perspective, in my mind, that is Oregon and Iowa. Iowa is laying 5.5 points. That total is 147.5, which seems awfully low. It opened at 141.5, which is just a baffling number. So I don't know. What do you make out of that game?
Iowa, Oregon. Is that what you said? Sorry.
Yep.
Boy, starts off the day. I just don't know how Oregon's going to guard Garza, but on the flip side, I don't know how Garza's going to guard anybody at Oregon. I will take Iowa here. I just think they're the veteran team. Oregon hasn't played yet in the NCAA tournament. I love Dana Altman. We all love Dana Altman as a coach. I just don't know. Again, I think Wieskamp now, you gave him another week. He's healthier. Frederick's healthier. I feel like at this point, how do you go with Oregon? I mean, on one hand, Rob, I say, like, there's got to be some close games and some buzzer beaters today. Where are they going to come from? I guess that's what my big thing is. Like, can Oregon play with Iowa and take it down to the wire and cover here? I don't think they win, but I think they could potentially cover on this one. But I think I'm going Iowa. I just think they got too much experience. They play together for so long. Not everybody in the Big Ten is going to underachieve, right?
Yeah. So I initially thought I was going to go that way, but the more I think about it, there's two things I like here. One, I do think that the side that you want to be on is probably Oregon. We're just everyone's kind of assumed that Iowa's fixed their defensive issues because they played a lot better, and yes, they did. They played much better down the stretch of the season, but they also didn't have to play anyone that would spread the floor the way that Oregon spreads the floor with the talent that Oregon has. It's one thing to say you're better defensively when you're going up against teams that have plotting 7-foot centers that don't really expose Luka Garza, but he's going to have to guard like the Amarugi kid, or he's going to have to guard Eric Williams on the perimeter, or somebody on the perimeter that can blow by. That's a big. Or you're going to have Iowa go to zone, which we've seen like Iowa zone is not very good. And yes, it's going to be problematic for Oregon to have to try to stop Luka Garza. They're going to have to find a way to double team. They're going to have to find a way to make that happen. But there's a couple things to note. One, Oregon's pressing defense is something where I think that they can give Iowa a little bit more trouble than you would expect. Iowa is the best team at protecting the ball. They have the lowest turnover rate, but they haven't really dealt with the kind of length and athleticism in a press that Oregon is going to throw at them. So I think that's something where they can kind of take advantage a little bit. And the other part of it is that Oregon hasn't played yet. Iowa played a game that was tougher than it should have been. Luka Garza was in down the stretch because they only beat Grand Canyon by 10. Oregon didn't play 48 hours.
So crazy to me that Oregon gets so fortunate in a way. Like if they win this, they get to the Sweet 16. Like think of the luck and ball. Like if Oregon ever went to the Final Four this year, like you didn't play a game. Like you got one.
They're not going to get to the Final Four because all of this talk about what's happening in this tournament doesn't matter because Gonzaga is going to beat everybody by double digits.
Yeah, I still tell you you're wrong if they face Baylor, but
there might be. That's like if we make that happen, please give me that, and I will gladly be wrong about beating.
We need that for all the great stuff that's happened here. Here's a question for you. Here's a question, and I wonder if anybody can weigh in on this. Does anybody miss Duke or Kentucky? No, nobody misses them. Like the tournament's been fabulous right now, and nobody misses Duke or Kentucky at all. It's been awesome. Again, it's different. I mean, obviously, but I think we've got enough good programs, enough talented teams that, to me, again, I don't miss either one of those.
So the last thing I just want to say real quick about the Oregon-Iowa game is that KenPom right now projects that total at 155. This line opened up at 141.5 and is now at 147.5. Vegas has been over adjusting. Well, actually, this is Bet Rivers has been over adjusting to be able to make up for the fact that like the first half unders were just hitting like crazy.
Right.
They 14 points. The opening line was 14 points off of what KenPom had. I don't think I've ever seen a number that big. Like generally speaking, it's about 3 or 4 points for most.
What does KenPom have it right now? What does KenPom have it
for? What by the way, everybody in the chat said no. They don't miss Duke except for Tony Parker Jr. Tony Parker Jr. looks like he misses Duke.
Does he miss Duke or Kentucky?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know which. I don't know if that's the Spurs Tony Parker or the UCLA Tony Parker.
Both. I don't know.
Wait, what'd you ask? Something about KenPom?
KenPom
has a total at KenPom has a total at 155. And the total at betrivers.com is 147.5.
That means Rob Dauster is definitely going with the over here. Like,
I'm going to take. I already put the bet in. I'm taking Oregon on the over
right now because if KenPom is different than the line guys, like that different.
No. Well, when it's that different, yes, you should. And look, you should. You should. If you were savvy, Goodman. If you were savvy, then you would be doing that too. But I mean, it makes sense logically too because Oregon's going to try to press. Iowa likes to run. The only logic that I could see that would lead me to believe that the under is a good play here is that Oregon's game plan is going to be to slow the game down because they don't want to allow Iowa to be able to get out into transition. And what they're going to do defensively with their press is instead of trying to force turnovers, it's just to slow them down and make them use clock offensively, which doesn't make sense to me because that means you're going to have to play him in the half court. And you don't want to play him in the half court because you can't guard Luka Garza. So I don't.
All right, move on. We got to get to 7 more games here, Rob.
Well, we'll get to them quickly because Gonzaga, Oklahoma, the line at Bet Rivers right now is 14. The total there is 154. Is there any way that I can talk you into putting money on Oklahoma in this spot?
If somehow De'Vion Harmon is allowed to play, somehow, which isn't going to happen. He's out. We know that. So. Can Austin Reeves go for 40? Probably not. But he'd have to. He'd have to for me to think about. I mean, again, it's just like you think like, why can't Oklahoma with Reeves, with Gibson, Manick's playing better? Actually, he really is. You're telling me Oklahoma can't cover 14.5? Really? They're a good Big 12 team. With Harmon, I would take that. I would feel actually pretty good about taking 14.5. Without Harmon, I'm not touching it.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. I got a stat for you. Ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
I got a little trivia for you. Gonzaga in their first round game beat Norfolk State by 43 points. That was the biggest NCAA tournament win since what game?
I don't know. Since Oklahoma beat somebody. Buddy Hield. Oh, what was it?
Buddy Hield, yes, but when they lost to Villanova in the Final Four by 44 points.
Holy shit. Wow. That was the
crazy, right?
Game. That was awful. Awful. I remember being there being like, what the hell just happened?
Oklahoma is enticing. I'm probably going to be staying away from this game. Look.
I feel like you have to do something on every game right now. From here on out.
I'm probably just going to put something on Gonzaga, but
just put it on the over. When in doubt,
I don't like overs have not been hitting in this tournament. Like with the empty gyms and everything, it just I don't know. It's weird. Like this, I don't have a great feel for it. If anything, I'm probably just going to be on Gonzaga because I think the chances of them being able to just run people out of the gym is probably where you want to be. But I don't know. I don't feel great.
Hey, you know what you should check on later is the different gyms so far in the overs. Because, like, Banker's Life, to me, again, where the Pacers play, I've been at each of these gyms, and, like, some of them look more like the one at Farmers looks more like a regular – like it's not cavernous. It's not huge. Same thing with Hinkle. And they look like they've actually got some fans. It doesn't look quite as empty. Banker's Life looks completely empty. It's just so big where Lucas Oil is split into 2 courts. So it doesn't look quite as big and cavernous. I would bet if you looked at it, Banker's Life, the unders probably hit on, if I had to guess, more than any other building.
Well, the unders are hitting like crazy, which is why Vegas is readjusting and why you're seeing, like, for example, KenPom has the Gonzaga Oklahoma total at 158 and the total at betrivers.com is 154. So at total unders have been hitting pretty consistently. First half unders in the first.
You wonder now though, part of it is nerves starting out in the tournament too. Part of it is obviously these buildings with no fans that they've never played in, So I think it's a combination, but you wonder if they adjust a little bit here now.
Yep. All right. So next up, UCLA laying 4.5 at Bet Rivers. The total there is 133.5. Jeff, what do you like?
UCLA. I do. I mean, crazy. I mean, listen, Abilene
Not
crazy.
crazy.
I know it's not crazy. You're right. I mean, it's not crazy. Abilene just pulled off a huge upset over Texas. Their defense is ridiculous. But if you just look, and I've seen both of them play so far in person here the last few days, you just look at the size and the talent level. It's kind of a no contest. My boy Joe Pleasant's going to have to play well in this one, but I'm taking UCLA. They've got a small guard too. I mean, that's the one thing. They've got a small guard who's really good in Tiger Campbell. So I actually think UCLA will play with a chip on its shoulder. There's one thing that UCLA has done. They played tough under Mick Cronin. And that was the fault of Texas, right? Like you just wondered how mentally tough they were in a lot of ways. I think UCLA can maybe not match them in their toughness, but again, they're the more talented team. I'll take UCLA, give them 4.5.
And here's the big stat. We all know about the turnovers that Abilene Christian forces, right? Matt Coleman turns the ball over on 21% of his possessions, and Texas as a team turns the ball over on more than 20% of their possessions. That ranks 260th nationally. UCLA, their point guard, Tiger Campbell, turns the ball over on 16% of his possessions, which is really, really good for a point guard that has the ball in his hands as much as Tiger Campbell does. And as a team, UCLA is top 40 in the country in not allowing turnovers. The last thing that I'll just note is that they have 3 guys on their roster that can go out and create a shot for themselves. 2 of those guys are 6'6" or taller, in Jaime Jaquez and Johnny Juzang, who's been playing lights out, by the way. Imagine if, all this talk about how Kentucky needs a shooter. Feel like they could have used Johnny Juzang this season. That's just me.
Yeah, Juzang, the kid that got hurt at Arizona.
Yep, Jamal Baker. So, yeah, I think we both like UCLA there. Next up, we have Ohio getting 5.5 points at Bet Rivers. The total there is 148.5 going up against Creighton. This is the matchup that I'm the most looking forward to today, just because we get Jason Preston against Marcus Zagorowski. That'll be a lot of fun.
I chose this game. So I'm doing Iowa, Oregon to start, then Gonzaga, Oklahoma. I think I got to do both of those. You only get 4 again for the day. And I had to pick between UCLA, Abilene, and Creighton, Ohio. I went Creighton, Ohio. I just want that Zagorowski Preston matchup is going to be absolutely awesome. And I mean, listen, to me, I don't know if that's going to determine the winner here. I think Creighton's going to need help from Bishop. Was great last game. Mahoney's got to be good this game. I think Creighton's got enough around them. They got to make shots. They got to make shots. And if they do, I think they roll over Ohio. But, to me, again, this one is all about the mindset of Creighton as much as anything. And if they can make shots and they come in, they're more talented. We know that. But Ohio's been great. I mean, it's not just Jason Preston either. Vanderplas has been good all year. And Jeff Boals has done a terrific job with this group, even though you thought he recruited Preston.
I did. I didn't realize. I didn't put that together.
Yeah, Saul Phillips recruited both those kids. He recruited both.
I forgot the whole Jeff Boals at Stony Brook era.
Right.
Totally forgot about it. I totally forgot he was at Stony Brook. Yeah. My brain, my March brain said that he went straight from Ohio State to Ohio, which is definitely not true. So I wish this is the problem of when you surprise me with guests. I don't have a chance to do any research, and I just got to guess, pull stuff out of my ass. So I like Ohio there, just because I don't think Creighton's the kind of team that's going to pull away from Ohio in this spot. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I do think the under is probably something that's in play. So that will be interesting to see. Next up, LSU is right now at Bet Rivers getting 5 points. That line's coming down a little bit. Total is 148 there. Jeffrey, can the Tigers pull off the upset and get to the Sweet 16?
It would be so Will Wade if they did it, right? Like, and think about it. If we have LSU in the Sweet 16, how many people are going to talk about a strong-ass offer or a strong-ass performance or whatever? Like, it's just so LSU. I mean, all the other teams are gone, right? I mean, other than Kansas. Kansas is still here, but Arizona's gone. Auburn's gone. USC's here too. Yeah, we still got some guys that were embroiled in those investigations. Really, USC, Kansas, and LSU. Maybe all three of them will make it into the Sweet 16. But yeah, I mean, Michigan's not the same team without Livers. We know that, but I still think they're the more disciplined team. They're the team you can count on. And Mike Smith continues to do it over and over again and prove us kind of not wrong, because we didn't say he wasn't going to be good enough, but he's been good. I just want to see Franz Wagner like take over today. Like he needs to. Like he can't keep doing this where he's just coasting. Like today against like Trendon Watford, he's got to show up and be a little bit of a killer here.
Yeah. I'm worried about the Hunter Dickinson matchup. I don't know who he guards defensively for LSU. They're the guy that kind of plays the 5 for them is Darius Days, and he shoots 40-something% from 3. Trendon Watford kind of handles the ball and almost operates as a point guard for him. So I'm expecting that the Franz Wagner will be on him. So who ends up chasing around Cam Thomas? Where does Mike Smith end up playing? Are you going to put him on Javonte Smart? Are you going to put him on somebody else? Like that's a little bit of a mismatch issue. But at the same time, like I don't know how LSU gets stops either.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And they do a good job getting Hunter the ball in the right spots, right? Like he seals well, and Mike Smith does a nice job, and not just Mike Smith. Livers did a good job too of low post entry passes, right? Getting him the ball where he needs it. He keeps it high and very rarely brings it down and scores. And they can't trade 3s for 2s. I mean, if there's anything we've seen other than like Abilene in this tournament, if you're making 10, 15 threes and shooting a good percentage, you're probably going to win the game. There's been a few outliers, but for the most part, that's how you win in the tournament these days. You get hot from 3. So I do agree with you. If LSU gets hot from 3, and I think it's really Cam Thomas, right? Like you got to make sure if you're Michigan, Cam Thomas isn't making 3s and isn't getting open looks. And honestly, he can make contested 3s as much as he can make uncontested 3s. He's one of the better contested shooters out there. So you have to do a good job on Cam Thomas if you're Juwan Howard in Michigan. Yeah,
I agree. I think that LSU gets the cover, though. We've talked about this before. I've made the point about Livers. And I think that they actually went out right. I have them winning my bracket, which doesn't matter because my bracket is terrible. But I think I'm going to be on LSU here. I'm also just going to be on the over because I don't know how either of these teams get stops against each other. All right, next up, we have Colorado and Florida State, which I think is actually a really interesting matchup stylistically. Colorado is getting 1.5 now. That's actually come down. Last night, Florida State was laying 2. That total is 141. Jeff, where do you fall there?
Florida State. I saw Colorado, and it was like a shooting clinic, to be honest, the other day against Georgetown. I felt bad for the Hoyas and Patrick Ewing. Wasn't even a game. 10 minutes in, and all those Georgetown fans that made the trip to Indiana, it was over. It was over. I mean, these dudes – I don't know if you saw, I caught them painting their chests, Hoya, in the parking garage as I was leaving, and it took them some time. It was some work, and all that work for naught. But yeah, I like Florida State here. I think they've been, to me, I think they were the best team in the ACC, and I said that kind of all year. Yeah, Conference of Champions, Eric. I think it ends for Colorado, although I love McKinley Wright. I absolutely love him. I just don't think Walker is going to shoot it anywhere. He was the difference early. Georgetown kept leaving him, and he made like 18 threes all year, and he was 5 for 5 from 3, 9 for 10 from the field, and they never really adjusted. Where Florida State, they shoot it, man. They've shot it well all year, and they're tough. And they're big, and they're strong, and they're men. So I like Florida State giving 1.5 here.
Yeah, I agree. I think that their switching defense is going to really take away the things that Colorado wants to do. There's 2 things that Colorado does offensively. They put McKinley Wright in ball screens, and I think that Florida State's ability to switch and Balsa's ability to defend on the perimeter will kind of negate the effectiveness of that. McKinley Wright is 6 foot. everybody on Florida State is like 6'6" or taller. He shoots 32% from three, so I don't think he's going to be able to shoot over the top of the defense. I'm worried about that. The other thing they do is they run a lot of blocker mover, which is nothing but like pin downs and flare screens. And Florida State switches all those exchanges. Like you can't run a pin down, you can't run an off ball screen against Florida State because they just switch it. They make you beat them in isolation, and I don't think that that Colorado has guys that are good enough to be able to do that. So I like Florida State here. Speaking of beating you in isolation, I think my favorite bet of the day today is Alabama minus 5.5. Maryland, like Florida State, is a team that only wants to switch defensively. Yeah. We saw them do it against UConn, and UConn had no answer because the only guy that can create for UConn is James Bouknight. Alabama runs the dribble drive motion, and dribble drive motion is basically like an offense that is designed to ISO here, drive, draw a defense, kick, open three, close out, drive, draw a defense, kick. Like that's literally their entire game plan. So I really like Alabama here.
Yeah, I'm with you in Alabama. They didn't play well the other day against Iona, but I think it was kind of a matchup. Maryland's got these switchable, a lot of guys between like 6'3" and 6'7", 6'8", and that fits right into Alabama's hands for me. Petty didn't play well. I think he'll be due to make some shots here, and I think Alabama will just get up for this one. I think that's always been my worry about Alabama, right? It's like, are they consistent enough mentally and to get up for every game? Now I think, okay, Maryland, coming off their win, I think the Crimson Tide will be ready for this one. And again, Herb Jones is going to be ready. And you just honestly, like, you can put Herb Jones on whoever's hot for Maryland. Like, that's the beauty of Herb Jones is like, whoever's hot, okay, go get him. Go slow him down. If it's Ayala, slow him down. Morcell, like whoever it is, Wiggins, it doesn't matter. Go get him, Herb, and just shut him down. So yeah, I like Alabama, which means I'm on like every favorite right now, and I don't like that. I don't like that. That's not going to happen.
Last thing I got for you: USC laying 1.5 at Bet Rivers. That total is 134.5. They're taking on Kansas. This is the hardest game for me to figure out. Totally. Because you don't know what you're going to get out of Jalen Wilson, number one, right? Like, he's coming back from COVID. Bill Self says he's going to play. Like, can he play? I mean, did he have any symptoms? Obviously, he wasn't able to do anything. Did he stay in shape? Like, McCormick looked gassed to me. Now, you can never tell with David McCormick also. Like, I feel like he always looks tired when he's going up and down the court. Not like Garza tired, but he always looks tired, as he labors up and down the court sometimes. Mobley, I don't know. I don't know how Mobley, like, how do they stop him? I mean, you're going to put Mitch Lightfoot on Mobley? Like, good luck. I think you almost got to just give Mobley his 20 and 10 in this game and just say, like, all right, we got to make sure nobody else hurts us. None of those guards can go off. Yeah, well, I mean, you just kind of hope that Mobley is in one of those games where he's not interested in trying to take over. Which is something that he does occasionally. My big question is going to be McCormick offensively. We know when we've talked about how McCormick is a little bit inconsistent and how he has a tendency to not use his size and physicality. So I think that if he can play 25 plus minutes, and if he decides every time he touches the ball, I'm taking Evan Mobley and I'm putting him through the rim and I'm going to go finish through him. That's something where, like, he can be very, very effective, and it can be a way that they can lift up the Kansas offense overall as a whole, because he has to be like the go-to guy, the offensive focal point. But if he's in a mood where he's like taking jump hooks and he's taking turnaround jumpers, like, Evan Mobley's going to have 7 or 8 blocks because he's not getting those off against Mobley's length.
The good thing is McCormick looked good in that first round game. Offense.
Yeah, but he was going up against Tanner Groves and Jacob Groves. Like, it's
whatever. Tanner Groves is still big, and I mean, Mobley's not Tanner Groves. I'm not saying that, but he still did it
right. Tanner Groves is probably better than Mobley. The legend Tanner Groves.
I just think at least McCormick looked effective and got his confidence back, because he lost it early in the season. He lost it, and his teammates lost it in him earlier this season. So he's got it back. Where is there any program that has fed the post better since we've been covering college basketball than Kansas? Not many. Maybe Carolina. Like, not many utilize it big, right?
Purdue
has.
Purdue's been better.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right. They just found the ball inside to him, and
Kansas is right there. We know if Agbaji's not making threes. By the way, I felt bad I think it was Brad Nessler calling that game. He couldn't get Agbaji. He could not pronounce it right. I forget how he was doing it, but if I had Nessler, finally I think somebody got in his ear and helped him out with it. But I think the biggest thing is, again, if he's not making shots and you have to rely on Jalen Wilson, like Christian Brown's got to make shots. Like, two of those three guys have to do something. But ultimately, Rob, I'm going to take Kansas here because I trust Bill Self more than I trust Andy Enfield.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it too. So it is what it is. All right, Jeffrey. We've been here way too long. It's been
we're no rush these days. Listen, these days, Rob, we got what? 2 weeks from tonight. I got 2 more weeks in Indy.
2 more weeks in Indy.
It's beautiful out today, I think.
2 more weeks in Indy. All right, Jeffrey. We will reconvene again tomorrow morning. Hopefully, we'll have a nice little guest for you guys.